Today we're going to be discussing inclusive education in Southwestern Ohio. Introduction. For this presentation, my goal is to inform you all of all that inclusive education entails and why or why not it's a good option for students today. By the end of the presentation, I hope that you have enough information to form your own opinion on inclusive education and how you can incorporate it into your classroom if you'd like. What is inclusive education? While many might be familiar with inclusive education, I wanted to remind everyone of the core definition, because I feel that it's easy for it to get lost in the discussion of this complex issue. The core definition of inclusive education is that all students attend the same school in regular, age-appropriate classes and are supported to learn and participate in all aspects of life in the school. Some of the benefits of inclusive education include children have a better view of themselves and their peers when they learn with children their age. Parents of children with disabilities get to see their children treated equally. Being with other children their own age, they can form friendships, and all children learn by being together. Inclusive education in society. All this suggests that the development of inclusion in Russia is planned, but there is always the risk that a great idea can easily turn into opportunistic formality, with the calculation of reporting figures for students with disabilities, while behind each statistical unit is a specific person, which is often forgotten. In fact, such a large-scale social project as an inclusive education in Russia can be implemented only if there is an act of goodwill of all participants in the higher educational process. Above is a quote from a peer-reviewed article which did a study on how prepared Russian schools are for inclusive education. The result was that they were unprepared, and above is the conclusion of the piece. I have to agree with them that inclusive education is not easy to achieve and requires the help of everyone. This is why a community-centered approach is vital to success. Teaching methods. In executing a curriculum that is time-limited in practice, the teachers have the task to use the material in such a way that all pupils achieve their educational goals, behave as a cooperative close community, and adapt to the needs of pupils with sensory impairments. For that reason, enhancing teachers' competencies and stimulating them to the teaching methods equally is necessary in inclusive practice. When looking at inclusive education, it's important to consider teaching methods. There are a wide variety available to teachers. This quote is from an article which summarizes a study done to use what teaching methods were mostly used by teachers in a classroom. The results showed that they lean towards one method rather than using all methods equally that are at their disposal. That is why it's so important that future teachers are given equal education on all teaching methods. Parent education and support. It is clear that parents choose their behavioral strategy due to the desire to prevent manifestations of maladaptation, but this position of parents reduces the developing possibilities of inclusive education. The psychologist is faced with the task of enriching the parents' possibilities in the use of an alternative strategy focused on the development of adaptive resources, which requires the organization of the subject, generating type of interaction. Currently, parents of children with disabilities are overprotective of their children, resulting in a learning strategy where they aren't able to grow and learn on their own. If parents learn to be supportive rather than protective, then the students can have a better learning opportunity. This is the type of parental support that must occur when it comes to inclusive education. Beneficial outcomes. A. There are no adverse effects or differences in the achievement of typically developing peers when students with diverse learning needs are educated in the regular classroom. B. The inclusive classroom environment is more positive or no different than segregated settings for students with learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and language impairments. C. Children who are educated in highly inclusive settings are in better health, enjoy going to school more, progress more quickly in school, and interact more positively with peers compared to students educated in minimally inclusive settings. Above are a few beneficial outcomes provided in a peer-reviewed article by Gabrielle Young. She gives the resources listed to prove that these outcomes are supported by research that has been conducted. Thus, it's evident that inclusive education is supported by scholarly evidence and is thus a more than valid option for future education practices. Creating an inclusive classroom. Step 1. Beliefs set the direction. Step 2. Social and emotional learning. Step 3. Learn together. Step 4. Reduce barriers to success. Step 5. Use what we know about how brains grow. Above are the steps to create an inclusive classroom provided in the video linked in this slide by Deborah Dykstra. She is a teacher and supporter of inclusive education. Seeing the steps listed out like so, it doesn't seem quite as overwhelming. It truly can be simplified to these 5 steps and isn't as difficult as one might believe. But the key is to be patient. A perfect inclusive classroom won't occur overnight. It takes time, education, and growth. Conclusion. I hope you've learned something from this presentation about inclusive education and it has helped you better understand the concept. If you were to create an inclusive classroom, what tips might you use to do so? Thank you. And then here are the resources I used if you'd like to learn more about it.